Good morning. This is John from the Springs Mennonite Church, and I'm here today on the last day of this week to share an encouraging story for you. Hopefully, it'll touch your heart and maybe make your day a little bit brighter. It comes from 2 Kings, and it's chapter 4, and it's the first 7 verses. Here's what we read. One day, the widow of a member of the group of prophets came to Elisha and cried out, "My husband who served you is dead, and you know how he feared the Lord. But now a creditor has come threatening to take my 2 sons as slaves." "What can I do to help you?" Elisha asked. "Tell me what you have in the house." She said, "Nothing except a small flask of olive oil." And Elisha said, "Well, borrow as many empty jars as you can from your friends and neighbors. Then go into your house with your sons and shut the door behind you. Pour olive oil from your flask into the jars, setting each one aside when it's filled." So she did as she was told. Her sons kept filling the jars, bringing the jars to her, and she filled them one after another. Soon every container was full to the brim. "Bring me another jar," the mother said to one of her sons. "There aren't any more," he told her. And then the olive oil stopped flowing. When she told the man of God what had happened, he said to her, "Sell the olive oil and pay your debts, and you and your sons can live on what is left over." This is an interesting story. It's the story of the wife of a prophet, or at least one of the groups of men who followed the prophet Elisha. And something happened to him. We don't know what it is. He's dead. And she couldn't pay her debts. So creditors come and they threaten to sell her sons into slavery in order to pay the debts. Now, that sounds like a really awful thing to do. But it wasn't all that surprising in the days of Prophet Elisha. People were sold into slavery, and the money that they got went towards their debts. It's kind of like the older, I don't want to say medieval, but at least maybe a little after that, where people were put into debtor's prison until they could pay off their debts. And set a cycle of that which could never end. And so she goes to Elisha. She goes to the man of God. She goes to the representation of God that she knows. And she says, "Look, my husband served you. He was very faithful, but now he's dead and we can't pay the debts." And Elijah says, "Well, what do you want me to do?" And I suppose there was a conversation there and in and around these verses. And he said, "Okay, tell me what you have." She has, "I have one small flask of olive oil." Now, olive oil was quite valuable in those days. It still is in some places of the world. It wasn't quite used as a type of currency, but it was bought and sold for a lot of money. So Elisha says, "Take what you have. Start out with what you have. Go get all the pots that you can and start pouring." And when the last pot was filled, the oil stopped. And she goes and tells Elijah what happened, and he says, "Okay, now go and sell it, pay off your debts, and live off the rest." What did Elisha do here? Well, he worked a miracle, that's for sure, but he wasn't even around for it. It wasn't as though he had to be there. The woman expressed faith in God. Obviously, her husband did because he used to be part of Elisha's crew. And so she knew where to go for help. When you and I get in trouble, do we know where to go for help? Do we go places other than God first? I get tickled well, I shouldn't say tickled, that's the wrong word. I get discouraged, I guess, when people say to me, "Well, all I can do is pray." And I want to scream, what do you mean? You can pray. That's what you can do. Now, is there anything else you can do? But you can at least pray. That's doing something. And it's not after everything else doesn't work, I'll try it kind of a thing. So Elijah says, what do you have? And she doesn't have much. Do you know it doesn't take much for God to work a miracle? In your life, wherever you are, whatever situation you're in, it doesn't take much for God to change it around. Oh, it might look impossible. It sure looked impossible to this lady. She didn't have any hope of anything happening, but it did. And so God took what she had, using her faith to believe that something would work. Can you imagine take a small little flask of oil? You had this great big huge pot, and you start pouring it, and you gotta be thinking, you gotta be kidding me. This isn't gonna make any difference. But she pours and she pours and she pours, and suddenly that pot is full. So she says to her son, give me another pot. Quick, quick. I don't want to stop pouring. It might quit. So he brings another pot. She fills that one up. She fills, and she keeps going. And then finally, she says, bring another pot. The son says, there aren't any more, Mom. We've gotten all we could find. And when she does that, the oil then stops. You see, the oil didn't stop until her need was met. God's miracles, God's actions don't quit until the situation is resolved. Now, it may not be resolved the way you want it. I don't know what this woman expected of Elisha, except help. And so many times we should go to God with the notion, God, I need help. And know that He's hearing us and listening to us. He's not leaving us out somewhere. Elisha could have said, hey, lady, look, I'm sorry, I'm busy. You figure it out. But he didn't. And God doesn't say that to you and to me. I don't care how far down in the pit you are. And some of you listening to me might be pretty far down there. Maybe you can't even see the bottom. But wherever you are, God's got it. You just have to reach out to Him and see what happens. He'll take whatever you have, as small as it is, and work a miracle just because of who He is. When you think about it, have a great weekend. Hope you see God at work in many, many wonderful ways. If you have a need or a concern, let us know. We'll do everything we can as fast as we can to help meet your need. Thanks so much for listening. I'll be back on Monday with a whole nother set of ideas. Take care. I'll talk to you again.